Hey guys, it's Randoms, and today we're going to be doing a bit of a kind of a ComputerCraft tutorial. Big reactors are probably the easiest uh, energy source, at least big energy source, to do in Tekkit. They're pretty easy to figure out and put together for somebody who knows absolutely nothing about it. You don't have to make it complicated like I did, have a bunch of coolant and have a big design. You get them for a pretty small one, get good power out of it. It's very user friendly. So it even makes a computer port block so that you can directly connect ComputerCraft modems or computers directly. And so I'm just going to show you guys a very basic setup. This is for if you have absolutely never coded or used ComputerCraft or done anything like this before. If you know about coding, if you know about ComputerCraft, this episode kind of isn't for you. But we're just going to start from the very beginning. That way anybody who just comes across this can have a very simple way of putting their reactor together and being able to monitor it. There are a lot of more complicated and fancier scripts out there on the internet. This is just a very simple one if you don't want to get into a bunch of stuff too quickly. And it's also kind of better, in my opinion, to learn about things and kind of do it yourself instead of just blind copying somebody. So I'm just kind of giving you the base for that, and that way you can do whatever you want with this. And so you're going to start out, you're going to make an advanced computer. They're pretty cheap, in my opinion. By the time you build a reactor, 7 gold ingots, a single redstone, and a single glass pane are not expensive. And so an advanced monitor is exactly the same as this, except for the glass pane in the middle. There is in the middle, and there is an extra gold ingot. So anyways, like I said, this is a very simple setup. We're not going to mess with connecting it with wires and modems and all that. We're just going to directly put our advanced computer right on top of the computer port. And it'll work like that. And we're just going to put the monitors, we're just going to make a small 1x2 thing right here, right next to it, because that's all we really need. We might even be able to get away with a single one, but that's what we want. And so you'll actually get 4 advanced monitors when you craft it. I actually made up 8. I'm just using 2. Eventually we'll be fancier with this, but this is all we need for now. And this is all you really need. I mean, you can get away without a monitor at all, but it's just helpful to have information about your reactor that you can see. Anyways, so ComputerCraft is pretty loosely based off of Java, in my opinion, or at least its language. If you're using the Stacks texture pack, in order to make it look clean like this, by default there are little dots like this all across both your monitors and the lines in here. That's because the ComputerCraft and high definition fonts are not compatible with each other, and according to their mods, they will probably never be compatible. So you'll actually have to edit part of your texture pack in order to make it look clean. And there's plenty of info about that on the internet. I'm just giving you a heads up if you use Facts. The default texture pack, it's fine. You don't have to modify anything. A lot of other texture packs, again, you don't have to do anything. But when you're using this Facts, like 64 and 128, you definitely have to mod it, or it just will annoy the crap out of you. Anyways, so when you open up your computer, hang on, let me just go back. So you just right click on it, and you type edit startup. It's just going to give you this blank page. Now the first thing that you want to do, as with any programming just about, is you're going to want to define your variables. So since our reactor, it's not just a power source for us, it's a friend. It gives us energy, it saves us from walking. Okay, so it's not really much of a friend, but you know what? I'm not just gonna call it reactor. I'm not gonna give it a boring name like that. And I'm sorry, I'm stuffy today, so that'll probably sound really nasally, and I'm sorry about that. I'm drinking tea. It's not really working. But so we're going to call our reactor Steve. Now we're going to have to tell our computers are actually not very smart. You have to tell computers to do anything. They really can't do anything on their own. But so we're going to tell the computer that Steve is assigned whatever value it finds from its back face. So to do that, you have to do I cannot spell with this keyboard. Peripheral dot wrap, and then parentheses, quotation mark, back. So you can do this with any of the faces. This is how you essentially tell where its inputs are coming from. This is called our variable, or as ComputerCraft calls it, our term. This is our function call, and this in itself is another function call, essentially. And so we are using a monitor. I'm going to call that display. I could make it shorter and then kind of be easier later on, but I'm just going to call it display. And so similarly, we're going to say peripheral dot wrap, quotation mark, right. So you guys are probably noticing my keyboard is a lot quieter today. I'm actually using my iPad's Bluetooth keyboard since I knew there'd be a lot of typing, and I'm sure you guys are getting sick of all my mechanical keyboards clacking. It does help a lot with FPS games, but I guess it could be kind of annoying for Minecraft videos, so sorry about that. I had to order in actually a Bluetooth connector for my computer, or adapter, but now that I have that, yeah, we can do it like this. So I don't really like the default black for the monitor. So what we're going to do, we're going to tell the monitor to set its text background color to blue. Let's make it blue. Okay, so what this basically does is it calls the set background color function, and it finds the set of colors, and it finds blue within that set. And so this actually just sets the text background. It isn't actually the monitor's entire background. I don't know why, but that's the way they chose to do this. So we're going to have to take care of that later on to make the entire monitor blue, and I'll explain how to do that. But first we're going to have to do pretty much one of the things that this is one of the last things, honestly, that you want to do in coding in general. Just because if you can't find a way to... I'll just start explaining more specifically. It'll make more sense than general info. So I'm going to essentially tell you guys to do what is called a infinite loop. Basically, coding has two main forms of loops. There are while loops, and there are... Wow, this is embarrassing. I'm forgetting the loops. Oh dear. Oh man, my professors will be ashamed of me right now. I'm gonna shut up. But okay, this is one of the two main forms of loops. And then basically it's checking while something do this. So while true do. And since this is never going to be set to false, it is always going to be true. Which means it's just going to go through what's ever inside of it, check, confirm it's true, and run it again. And like I said, infinite loops are one of the last things that you want to do ever in general programming, but in here it's okay in this instance because we have a way to terminate this program forcefully. If you don't have that, do not ever use an infinite loop because you will essentially get screwed. If you do end up accidentally making it to where your computer cannot get out of it, for instance by putting a loop inside of a loop, it's called nesting loops, then what you can do, I believe, is set up a disk drive in the ComputerCraft system, like underneath the computer, and it will automatically try to boot from the disk drive first. But in real life, don't ever get yourself in an infinite loop that you can't break, because that's bad. It's really, really bad. Well, in this instance, if you do this, there's nothing to fear. This is very basic. You're not going to screw yourself. Just trust me on that one. So getting back to the actual code, like I said, this only sets up the text background color, and the text will essentially overwrite itself, so that's one thing you need to be careful for. If you're missing text, make sure that you have your coordinate system right, and I'll go over that later, and it's not actually like writing over itself. But we can take advantage of that in order to make the entire background blue. And we do that by telling it at the beginning of the loop every time to clear. And what this does, it doesn't actually clear it. What it does is it writes a blank space over every single character. And so what that does is essentially makes a blank across the entire screen and highlights all those blanks blue. And so the end effect is we now have a blue screen. I don't know why they couldn't have just made this do that by itself, but, you know, whatever. But now we're going to have to define a few more variables, mainly what we want to get from Steve. For one thing, it's power, and by power, I mean how much energy it has in its battery. So you do that by telling the computer to go look into Steve and get his energy stored. Next, we're going to want Steve's current amount of fuel and his maximum amount of fuel. So we do those pretty much the same way. And you can call your variables whatever you want. It's just easier, especially when you're beginning with this stuff, to call your variables something that you would associate with what they represent. And again, you don't have to do yours exactly like this. This is just a very, very basic base. You don't even have to keep track of the fuel. I just am. Really, the most basic thing that you want to look at is how much power you have left. But okay, so let's just And I believe I actually forgot something. Yes, I did. So it's actually get fuel amount, not get fuel. There we go. Okay, and so now we can actually start writing to our display. And you do that by telling the display first where you want it to write. Computers are not very smart. You have to tell them exactly what to do. I don't know if I've actually mentioned that in this video or not. I had to do a retake because the server restarted when I was making my first try of this. So hopefully I'm not repeating info. But we're just going to tell it to go to the very first character slot. And so if you are used to if you are used to coding or matrices, don't think of this as a matrix. It looks like it would be, but it's not. This is not row column. This is X, Y. So if you do a lot of coding, you might actually get this reversed at first. I did actually. If you're not, then you get to start fresh, which is awesome. Just remember this first number, the bigger it gets, the further right you go. The second, the bigger it gets, the further down you go. Okay, so now that we've told the computer where to write, we need to tell it what to write. So you do that by using the write command. So we're going to tell it to write power. Then we're going to set it over a little bit on the same line. A little bit of Bluetooth lag there. Set cursor pause. I don't know why they just decided to say get fuel amount, get energy stored, get fuel amount max, and then decide to make it cursor pause instead of cursor position. Like, why of all things to shorten that alone? I don't know. There's a lot of things I don't get about this mod. Like I said, let's just move the cursor over a little, but keep it on the same line. And then we're going to tell it to output the power stored. So we do that by actually just using this variable name. So the way the write function works, you can use quotes to write whatever characters that you put in here. Or you can just have it write a variable name and it will display the value of that variable. And so we're going to do like a similar thing with fuel. So display dot set cursor pause. And let's make this on row 4. That should be not too much down, but down far enough. And have it write fuel. Again, the forced exact writing instead of a variable name to begin with. And next we're actually going to have it do a little bit of math. Because we don't really care as much about the fuel that it has in terms of millibuckets. What we really want to know is how much the percentage of fuel it has left. I mean, I guess you could look at the actual amount it has, but the percentage of fuel left is a lot easier to understand. It's a lot more, in my opinion, it's a lot better to use than the straight up amount of fuel. Because otherwise you have to actually know how much fuel your reactor holds. But instead you can just have the computer figure out how much it holds and tell you how much it has left relative to that. So I'm gonna move it over again, and then we're going to take advantage of its math skills. So the way that we do that, we're gonna have it right. So this is the nice thing about Java-esque languages, is that you can call functions within functions. And as long as you use your syntax right, then you shouldn't have any issues. So we're going to tell it to write, and keep track of your parentheses in this. This is the easiest way that you'll mess something up, is to get your number of parentheses wrong. So open parentheses for write, then math, it's going to call up its math menu, floor, which is going to take essentially the lower half of a decimal, or rather take a decimal, round it down. Then you do parentheses for floor. Now you have to tell it what you want it to round. And so what we want it to round is a term, math term that is. So we want it to round the amount that is fuel here divided by max times, so this quantity times 100. Because this is going to give us a decimal. This is going to make it up into whole numbers. But this might end up being like 99.2 or something. So we don't really want that. We just want it to round it down into 99, And so we have this quantity, that's why I put the parentheses there. So we have this parentheses, we close it off. Now we're going to close off floor, and now we're going to close off math, or rather, write. And so that should be the last of the things that we need to display. Now, here's the kind of, however much you want to customize your reactor. Yeah, you can mess around with the names, you can mess around with what you want it to display, but the kind of more important part is the power management. This is the whole reason why we're making this. So we're going to have it check the power levels every 10 seconds. So we're going to say if power is greater than or equal to 9 million. Remember, the internal battery or internal energy storage of a big reactor, no matter how big it is or how small it is always going to be 10 million. So I guess you could have it go to 10 million. I just wanted to go up to 9. It's whatever you want to do. So if power is greater or equal to 9 million, then, and I'm going to tab or indent in just to kind of separate this a little bit better. Steve.set active false. And this does have to be true and false when you're using them like this. They do have to be lowercase. You cannot do uppercase F. And then end. And So this is basically just saying, while it's running this loop continuously, it's going to check to see if this statement is true. And if this statement is true, then it is going to turn off our reactor. So if our reactor's power levels get over 9 million, this will automatically turn it off. And so the next thing that you'd want to do with that is if power is less than or equal to, let's say 250. Yeah, that's a good point, or a good starting point. So we're going to say if power gets down to a quarter of the total, which will be 2.5 million, then we're going to turn the reactor on. So it's just the reverse of what we put up there. And you can put these in either order. It's up to you. It doesn't really matter. And so do remember to put these ends at the end of the ifs, because otherwise it won't work. But okay, so now we have our display going, we have the power management going, and now we need to essentially repeat the loop. Now ComputerCraft is notorious, even though this should keep running forever, if you don't give it a break, it tends to crash, even though it shouldn't. And so we're going to do that by telling it to go to sleep for 10 seconds at the end of each loop, and then I will run the loop again. And so we're going to signify the end of the loop by hitting end. And so what this is going to do is it's going to turn on, and it's going to do this. And then it's going to hit the beginning of the loop. And it's going to go through all this. It's going to check the, well, at the very beginning of the loop, it's going to check all the values. It's going to display them. It's going to check whether it should turn it on or off. And it's going to end the loop after sleeping for 10 seconds. And when that end happens, it's going to check whether or not this condition is still true, which it will be. And keep running and running and running. Now, again, this will only work when this chunk is loaded. So if you're not here, it's not going to be running, which is good for all of your neighbors and server mates. So honestly, I would advise not, if you use a chicken chunks chunk loader, then you don't have any issues, because those only load the chunk when you're actually logged on. But otherwise, be nice, be considerate, don't use this with a chunk loader if you're not going to use the chicken chunks one. Just because it could it shouldn't cause server lag, but if it's running all the time, it might. So just be considerate of your server mates. Now, if you're doing this on a single player world, it doesn't matter. Do whatever you want. But we need to save this, and then we're going to exit. Okay, and now we're back at the startup screen of the computer, and now we tell it to actually run startup. And it looks like I messed up somewhere. Here we go. I somehow missed the assignment there, because you do have to actually tell it. Like I said, computers are not actually smart. You have to tell them everything that they need to do. So you have to specifically tell it that it needs to be assigned this. It actually cannot go, oh, well, this is what they mean. No, the computer does not know what you mean, ever, unless you specifically tell him, or it. Alright, and so now we should be good. Ow, I swear, I can do this fine whenever I'm, you know, off camera, and then as soon as I go on camera, then I make all of the mistakes ever. But it is nice how, if you could see, it told me which line the error was on. So it is helpful. It has a good debugger. And now, third time is the charm. Third time is not the charm. Okay, string startup. Did I not save it? I could have sworn I saved it. And this video is probably going on forever, which I profusely apologize for. Okay, I know I saved this. I don't know why it's being a tool. Wait, I don't want to edit it. I just want to run it. Attempt to index a nil value. Okay, you know what? I'm just gonna debug this off camera, and then I'm gonna come back, because honestly, I wrote this thing 3 times now, and this is the first time I've ever had issues actually with it. So I will be right back. Okay guys, we're back, and as you can see, our reactor has been turned on, and it is currently actually refilling the rest of the resonant energy cell. When it's done with that, it will start refilling the rest of its energy buffer, and then you will start seeing these numbers go up. The problem there was actually in the startup program, when we told it to look for the color blue, it's colors.blue, and I had it written color.blue. Not as in the British spelling color versus color, but as in I forgot the S. And again, like I said, you have to tell the computer exactly what you want. It does not know that you meant to add the S there. It really doesn't. People give technology way too much credit these days. But our resonant energy cell should be going up pretty soon, hopefully. I might just stay down here until it does. As you can see, we have 99% of our fuel. And let's look at this. So, it says 100. I'm guessing that it's really like, okay, so there's like 0.1%, and the way floor works, it will round down. So that's saying 99.9 is 99. You can have it do ceiling if you want instead. But as you can see, every 10 seconds this will update its power level. So there we go. Until it is full, it will keep buffering and keep updating every 10 seconds. So update, there we go. And then once it reaches 9 million, it will automatically turn itself off on the next update. So assuming that it hits 9 million, there we go, and the reactor has now turned itself off. So, I see what is draining my power. Or is it still? Oh, that's what it is. There, it will continue to fill up a little bit while the heat drowns down, but it did turn it off automatically, just like we wanted. So I can't imagine how long this episode is, but at least now you have a very basic understanding of ComputerCraft, and you'll be able to set up a reactor to be able to turn itself on and off as you need it to, because it really is annoying to come and have to manually turn it on, turn it off. And this way you don't have to constantly refuel it as well. But so I hope this was helpful. I hope it was informative, especially if you knew nothing about this at all. And I will see you guys next time.